Hey guys, I wanted to hop on, do another Physiologically speaking live. I want to try to start doing these a couple times a week. Maybe you all like them. I just feel like I need to start doing more video content, and doing these live shows is sometimes fun for me and hopefully interesting to you all. It allows me to do more updates on content more frequently in a different format. So let me know if you like these videos, if you want to keep seeing a live show a few times per week. Let's see. So I don't know. What do I want to talk about today? A few updates, I guess, and some interesting things going on online. But first update, I guess, is on my injury. So people who follow the Substack may be aware that I'm currently dealing with an injury, a running injury that I wasn't really sure what it was until a few days ago, but I did get an MRI a few weeks ago, talked to a few doctors in the past week, and the consensus is that I have a second metatarsal stress fracture or stress reaction in my right foot. Very unfortunate, but it's sort of what I expected. It's kind of the news that I was expecting. I mean, all of the symptoms pointed towards that. Um, and there just wasn't a lot else that it could be. And I was expecting the worst, which I try to do whenever I'm injured, expect the worst, pray for the best, I guess. But yeah, so it appears, I have a second metatarsal stress fracture or a stress reaction. And that's what the MRI showed. And so, what that means is it's pretty standard recovery for those types of injuries. It's, 6 to 8 weeks of no running, non-weight bearing for a couple weeks. So I ordered myself a nice, cool medical boot from Amazon that I get to walk around in for a week or so. We'll do some strength training. We'll continue to ride the bike as long as I don't have pain for a few weeks, and then, just let it heal. So it'll be a decent time of off of running, which is unfortunate, but I'm gonna embrace the off season, and just kind of look forward to goals next year. But yeah, unfortunate, but again, it's kind of what I expected. I expected the stress fracture, stress reaction diagnosis, just given my symptoms. So there's the update on that. Should be leaving tomorrow for the marathon, so it's kind of hurts, kind of a sore subject, but we'll move on and get back to running when the time comes. So the second thing I wanted to chat about, I got an interesting message today on X. Another, question about just like a personal scenario, not like sensitive personal, but I'll just read the message directly. So this was from Brad, and he was asking me, Brady, maybe I'm hallucinating, but I remember on a post about a year ago, you said you had a minor bout of AFib, so atrial fibrillation. Was this actually AFib, and has it been resolved? I think I'm dealing with something weird myself and just made an appointment with a doctor for early next week. Yeah, so it was a little bit over a year ago, I summer of last year, so I think it was either June or July, maybe even August, but I was out on a run one day, and, when I came back from the run, so not actually on the run, but I came back from the run, and I just started experiencing this, what I recognized as an arrhythmia, just my heart beating really odd. It would couple beats in succession, and then it would pause and then go back, which was weird. I had never experienced something like that before. And it was pretty much like lasting all day then, which was concerning. So after hydrating, after stopping, after resting, I was still feeling that little bit of arrhythmia. And then over the next couple days, I would try to run, and I was feeling some left, I forget if it's left or right, but probably left, which was concerning to me. But it's feeling some left-sided chest pain and like very uncomfortable, which again, I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. Just some tightness in the chest, and then when I would stop, it would go away. So like those are key signs like, hey, you should probably not be running. You need to take some time off. After a couple days of experiencing that, I actually ended up going to one of these just like walk-in emergency room places because I wanted to check out what was happening. Otherwise, I was asymptomatic, but I was just feeling these odd chest sensations. So I went to the ER. They did an EKG, and they were like, "Hey, you need to go to the hospital." So, and I go again, I was like feeling fine, but they told me I needed to go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, ended up staying there for a couple days. They just did a bunch of tests. I got an echocardiogram done. I had some blood tests done, had an EKG on the entire time. Long story short, nothing came out of that. And so I say that this was the first time I'd experienced that, but I had actually experienced the arrhythmia part a couple of times before, a couple years earlier. This was the first time I had experienced chest pain, but that all of these tests, anything that they've ever done, I've had several echocardiograms and stress tests. Like throughout my life, and they've all come back negative. So in terms of like structurally, my heart like appears to be fine, which is, a huge concern. I mean, I'm only 32 years old, but I have been doing endurance sports my entire life. And so there's this idea in endurance sports and some evidence to support that, long-term endurance training could be harmful for the heart, promoting coronary calcification, predisposing to arrhythmias. I mean, endurance runners in general are inevitably at a higher risk of atrial fibrillation compared to the general population. That's pretty well known. So I think the awareness of that also kind of makes me concerned, and the reason why I ended up, going to the hospital to get this checked out. But all the tests just came back with Zippo, absolutely nothing. So kind of frustrating, but also kind of liberating. And it's still something that I watch out for. But what I have boiled it down to, because it's very, very consistent in terms of the onset of this, is it's dehydration and electrolyte imbalance versus a structural issue with my heart. And how I know that is because I can almost reliably initiate it if I'm in like the garage in the summer. I live in Texas, I'm doing a bike ride or something, and I am dehydrated and I know that I'm probably just not replenishing electrolytes enough or dehydrated. I'll get that'll be my trigger for the arrhythmia. Or oddly enough, this is the weirdest thing, but I will sometimes be able to, I don't do this on purpose, but if I get back from a long, hard run or finish a bike and I chug a decent amount of ice cold water, that will trigger the arrhythmia for, a little bit. It'll go away after a few hours. So it's the craziest thing. But I've pretty much dialed down like what the cause of this is. And I'm not necessarily concerned that this is there's something like wrong with your heart. You need to stop running or you need to take precautions. This is a very reliable thing that I can trigger and prevent, I guess, through hydration, electrolytes, and things like that. So, that was just an answer to Brad's question. And I think I get this question a lot because, as I mentioned, there is all that evidence in endurance runners that they may be predisposed to these heart conditions. And, should I be concerned if I'm doing too much endurance exercise? Obviously, I'm biased being an endurance athlete, and I don't want, these harms to be true. But I truly do think that we need more evidence in this area. And just the cohorts that have been studied here, the 56-year-old men who started exercising in their 40s and may have other risk factors, I'm just not totally convinced that endurance exercise directly leads to this pathological heart remodeling or puts you at risk for heart disease or cardiovascular disease. In fact, the opposite is probably true. So it's like one of my most favorite topics. Thomas says, I was getting this was from cold plunging after exercise. Oh, that's interesting. There are a lot of people I think who have share a similar experience. And I definitely, I mean, what I think that probably is like there's such a transition and similar to me drinking the water and getting it, but you're transitioning from, high body temperature post exercise, jumping in the cold plunge. It's going to like shock your body. So just another reason not to cold plunge, Thomas, I think, among the many reasons. So anyway, the arrhythmia thing. And what I also learned from that experience of being in the hospital was just that I never want to be in the hospital, especially for something like exercise related, or I guess just exercise related, because truly like people in the hospital, and this isn't anything against them, but just people in the general hospitals, like they don't understand endurance, endurance athlete physiology. I mean, anybody who is a runner or an athlete with a low resting heart rate will understand that when you're in the hospital hooked up to an EKG, they often have to turn off the alarm because the alarm just goes off because you're in bradycardia the entire time if your heart rate drops below 40. And so they turn off the alarm. They're always freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, your heart rate is 32. I'm like, yes, it's always 32 beats per minute, but I'm resting. I've been laying in a bed for like 2 days. It was funny at one point, I actually took a picture of this. Excuse me. I took a picture of this, but there was one point I was laying in the hospital bed and I had the EKG hooked up to me and my heart rate was 28 beats per minute. So I think that's the lowest I have ever seen my heart rate. Barely alive, barely beating. But again, I had been laying in a bed for like 12 hours and probably dehydrated. So, but yeah, that was interesting. That was causing some concern among the hospital staff. But anyways, and Howard Lux posted something about this the other day, but like in terms of any condition, whether it's orthopedic, whether it's health related, runners need to see runners, athletes need to see athletes because we're a lot different than the general population. And I mean, I'm not saying that in any sort of like braggadocious way. It's just we're different, I mean, yes, a 60-year-old person with heart failure who has a heart rate of 30, that's a lot different from a marathon runner with a heart rate of 30 in terms of like what's going on, what's causing that. Um, Same thing with these endurance running injuries. It's like runners need to see runners. They know what questions to ask and detailed history on how much miles you're running. I mean, I'll go back to the story of when I had this injury 3 weeks ago and I went to the sports med clinic. I left there with a diagnosis of you just irritated your MTP joint. Go home and run to tolerance, and I'll see you back here in a month if things do or don't get better. So I had a stress fracture and I was told that I could go home and run safely. And I would have, probably broken my foot within a week if I would have listened to that advice. So that's the importance of having people who are knowledgeable, smart in your circle who you can contact. So appreciative again of all that, these people in my life who were able to do that. But I said that in the other video, so I'll stop repeating that. Um, okay, else do I want to talk about? One last thing today. I wish I could share images on Substack Live to show, but I came across this article today. I haven't read the entire article yet, but it's one of many that I've seen within the past month, and it's pretty irritating. There is just this obsession among, and I don't know the way to phrase this, but the non-conservative media about protein, but in the opposite way that the health sphere is obsessed with protein. So there's no doubt that there's an obsession with protein. If you're on Health X, if you follow my Substack, you've seen stuff about this, but protein is in vogue. Everybody's obsessed with protein. Eat more protein. Protein's in everything. Protein snacks, protein ice cream. It's in everything. Starbucks has protein drinks now. Haven't had them. Don't plan on trying it. But there is this alternative, that narrative among people who are like the anti-health influencers that enough with this protein nonsense. Like everybody's eating enough protein. You don't need to focus on it. And I don't really understand like where it's coming from. I mean, to be anti-protein or to be anti-high protein doesn't really make sense. I mean, I get that there are people in the health space with agendas who are selling protein and may have a vested interest in getting people to eat more protein. But in general, I just think like if there's any evidence that people need to be eating more of something, it's probably protein. Um, and there are very few harms of it. And so I see these articles all the time. And this article is titled, "Bro, enough with the protein. You're just making expensive pee. Experts say the hype around the latest dietary must-have has become a farce." I don't know. I mean, I think we're just like revisiting these narratives now. It's like you can only absorb 30 grams at once, and you'll just pee all the rest of it out. And that just simply is not true, for one. So it's almost like science denial to say some of these claims. There is a range of protein that's optimal. I think 1 to 2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight per day, probably great for a lot of people. There's a lot of people in the protein space who are like, you need to eat a gram per pound of body weight. I think that's probably overkill for a lot of people. But again, I don't see a downside to eating that much protein. You're not peeing it out. You're not wasting it. There's plenty of science now to show that all of the protein you eat is going to something. Um, and again, you can only eat three things. You can eat protein, you can eat carbs, and you can eat fat. For most people, I think if they eat more protein, they're better off than if they eat more carbs or more fat. Aside from, say, endurance athletes who could probably benefit from eating more carbs. But the general person, um, they could probably benefit from eating more protein. But I just don't get this narrative that like all these articles and all these commentaries in the New York Post and the New York Times of the obsession with protein is getting out of hand. It's just, I don't know. I think people are just looking for stuff to write about. I mean, okay, to be fair, I have written a few articles on my Substack saying, we have a protein problem, or why are we so obsessed with protein? But the titles of those don't, I think don't maybe align with actually what the content in there is. And with my stance is, yeah, we're obsessed with protein. We probably don't need to be putting it in processed foods and processed snacks, but there's probably a little downside to eating less protein. That's kind of my conclusion here. So I don't know. We're always going to be obsessed with something. There's always going to be fads. And I'm just like, I'm tired of seeing all these articles where people are somehow anti-protein. It's sort of like the anti-exercise agenda that was a couple of years ago popping up everywhere. It's like, oh, if you exercise, you're right wing, or I don't know. I'm not going to get into politics on the Substack. That's not what it's for. It's for sharing science, and science is not supposed to be political, right? Anyway, there was a comment here from Randy, but pretty clear endurance athletes have a higher rate of AFib. Get an Apple Watch if you're concerned about arrhythmia and you can monitor it. I had mine successfully ablated. All good sense. Yes, physiology is different. Few doctors understand. Yeah, Randy, I don't have an Apple Watch. I do have a Chorus, but the interesting thing about me is in my situation is like I could tell you when I'm in AFib and I know it. I know if I am, I know if I'm not. I can simply just put my finger on my pulse and feel it. It was the first time I ever had it. I actually was in graduate school working in a lab where we did exercise testing. And so I think I had AFib and I literally drove to the lab and hooked myself up to an EKG and printed it out and then took it to my cardiologist who diagnosed me with atrial fibrillation. But yeah, I think Apple Watches can be awesome for detecting that type of stuff. My dad actually also he has AFib and he detected that with an Apple Watch and he's scheduled for an ablation one of these days. He keeps procrastinating. So, Dad, if you're watching this, go get your procedure done. His isn't from endurance exercise though. So yeah, it is interesting with the technology we have these days that you can detect that type of stuff. But with mine, I don't really need the watch, but it might be interesting to buy one just to see if it is able to detect when I'm in AFib or not. Um, all right. Well, that's all I wanted to chat about today. If people have anything they'd like me to chat about or any other questions, I'll stick around here for a few seconds. But otherwise, I don't want these to go on forever. I kind of just want to log on, talk about what's on my mind, hopefully some interesting things you all are interested in. For those who are just joining, talked about injury update, metatarsal stress fracture, second metatarsal stress fracture. Boo, going to be out for a little bit, but we'll be back stronger than ever, focusing on my winter bulking arc. So prepare to see a lot of content on strength training. I talked about a message on arrhythmias, and I talked about the obsession of making fun of or mocking the protein craze in the health space. Again, I think protein is a little bit overblown. I am, for one, I'm tired of seeing protein in everything. We don't need protein cheese puffs and protein lattes, but alas, here we are. My prediction for 2026 is that fiber is going to be the next protein. We're going to just see fiber being put in everything, which I don't necessarily think is a good thing. People aren't eating enough fiber, but let's get it from Whole Foods. Let's not get it from sources like fortified with fiber. I don't want to see fiber ice cream and fiber. I don't know what else fiber we can fit in everything. Fiber lattes coming soon to Starbucks. Anyway, thanks to the 42 of you who are here right now watching live. If you missed the beginning, this will be posted on my Substack probably later as a video, so you can watch that. And for the rest of you, I will see you tomorrow when I send out the Physiology Friday newsletter. Have a good day, everybody.